Very pleased to be joined here at SB Nation by the one and only, the dashing, the debonair, the internationally famous. He is the man who ruined football to some, but not to all, from a variety of places. It is Sam Schwartzstein. A very difficult last name to pronounce, Sam. I'm pretty proud of myself.
You crushed that. You crushed that. Not a lot of Dallas Cowboys fans can say that name. So, yeah, you crushed that.
Not a lot of Dallas Cowboys fans can do a lot of things. I have a lot to get to with regards to a lot of things, but you mentioned right before we've been following each other for a while. What is your general take on the Dallas Cowboys? I want to start there. As somebody whose brain is bigger than all of ours, you naturally have a level of insight that I'm very interested in.
Look, I'm not big on cranial size, but I was wearing an extra large helmet in college at Stanford. I'm from Southlake, Texas, so my friend groups we still have a group chat called Cowboys Fans Anonymous that we still talk about the Cowboys, even though I'm more partial to the 49ers because my wife, Kelly, is a huge fan. But, I think what the Cowboys showed last year with Clayton Adams and the running game is they can actually establish a run with a quarterback that will audible and change plays at the line of scrimmage a lot, which is the key to success right now. Is can you have a run game against a lot of nickel defense, and do you have a quarterback that'll get you in the right play? And Dak Prescott's proven he can do that, and then they continue to find weapons. Now, the problem with the Dallas Cowboys seems to be that they can often make the right decision too many times, and then that puts them in a bad situation where they don't want to continue to make the right decision. What do I mean by that? Drafting premium positions, actually getting the best player in the NFL at that position, and then not maintaining it. I think that is something that they'll have to change going forward. I think the upgrade, what I believe is an upgrade at defensive coordinator, allows them to move away from a very easy to understand static defense. So, we'll say they ran the most zone coverage in the NFL last year. Well, they still had their corners playing the most zone coverage. If you think about another high zone coverage team in the Seahawks, they actually had their corners playing a lot of man specifically. They were able to match coverage. If you're playing zone and you're literally standing flat-footed almost every play, hey, you're going to have a lot of problems, especially trying to adapt to the routes that teams are running with choice routes to be able to take advantage of the static zone. So not playing enough match coverage. They'll upgrade now at defensive coordinator. I think that's going to be a big difference.
I agree with everything you said. Also, a clear ball knower, and that the first thing you mentioned was Clayton Adams, somebody who doesn't get a lot of pop, obviously. You're right. The transgressions the Cowboys have at their behest are some that I'm not shy about calling out. So I appreciate that you said it in a much more diplomatic way than I did. You brought up the Seahawks. Right after the Super Bowl ended, I was talking to someone immediately after, and they played in dime. Over 50% of the Super Bowl. And I do wonder if that's a trend that we're going to see pick up. For a long time, nickel was the new base, and that feels like 100 years ago. But I wonder what that looks like this week as it relates to the NFL Combine. Like if there's
100%,
just because the NFL is such a copycat league, and not only copycat, but people look at the Super Bowl specifically, at a playoff run specifically, and say like we have to do that. And not arguing against playing dime and going heavy in that sense, but I want to get to a lot of things, but do you agree that trend is good? Because the Cowboys are linked to a lot of corners, and that feels like a natural direction that a lot of teams want to go.
Look, I've spent a lot of time playing football, spent a lot of time making football rules, but most importantly, it's all about the players.
Right.
And they're playing nickel because they list Nick Emenwari as a defensive back.
Yeah.
He's 99th percentile for slot corners in height and weight, and he's 60th percentile, for off-ball linebackers, 70th percentile for off-ball linebackers in height at 6'3". And if he's playing at his listed 220, which is very different than what he looks like at 237, his 237 is above 50th percentile for off-ball linebackers. I'm talking about the Luke Kuechly style linebackers. Right. So are they playing nickel, or are they playing dime, or are they playing nickel with him in there? Now, what's awesome about this is when we had from Prime Vision with Next Gen Stats our Patriots game, one of our best numbers was that Stephon Diggs got lined up against linebackers more often than any other wide receiver. And that's where they made a lot of their hays. Formational advantage that they were able to make to have a linebacker on Stephon Diggs. Well, guess what? If you're playing dime coverage, you don't have to worry about that. Ernest Jones is the only linebacker on the field. You have a DB there, so anyone can match speed there, and then you can still stop the run and do it in too high. Well, guess what? Those DBs, none of them matter as long as the front four are getting pressure and eliminating double teams. And that's how they're doing a lot of their stuff. And so at the end of the day, Mike McDonald and John Schneider being the only GM to have won a Super Bowl with two completely different rosters is a crazy stat to think about because he's had the longevity and able to do it. Comes down to the front four and Nick Emmanwori, who probably not on him as everyone else is from a personnel or schematic standpoint of where he's able to take advantage of, but he definitely had an impact on how teams look at base and nickel, and especially the combine, where which players can I move? I'll real quick to finish. I did a GPS combine at the XFL where we did all the regular stuff, and then we did scheme position. We put you in position groups, and we put a GPS tracker, and we try to find out where we'd put you. Again, minor league football. None of these guys made the NFL, so it's a unique thing where could we move positions? And we were find on the D line, one of our specific drills, that if you had a certain time and a certain force impact, you would actually better be a defensive tackle than a defensive end. And now we can move your position based off what you've performed on these drills. And I think that's going to be a lot of moving forward of, okay, well, we've seen you play this position in college because that might have worked in college. But wow, you could really be effective at this position in the NFL. And the data can tell us that and through GPS. I think that's going to be the next wave of what happens at this combine.
I love that. I love that. Just for so long, I feel like we sorted players just by height and weight, and you were a defensive tackle because you're a larger human being. I would offer. I've also killed the Cowboys for Micah Parsons, not for trading him, although that too. But the evaluation was it's an off-ball linebacker, and he only ever put his hand on the ground because DeMarcus Lawrence, current Seahawk world champion, got hurt, and the sequence of dominoes that fell, and that's one of those like, holy crap, this actually works when nobody necessarily, maybe some people did, but it wasn't common practice to think of it.
One of my player personnel guys at XFL recruited Micah to the Penn State, and he was saying, Justin King, I have to give him a big shout out. He was saying forever, this guy's got to put his hand in the dirt. And I'm looking at him like, I'm telling you, his relative athletic. I mean, he's got to be off the ball. I'm looking at it, and he's like, I'm telling you, he's got to he's got to return kicks too. Like he was like, when we were doing the kickoff, he was like, he's got to be on our kickoff too if we had him. I was like, what? Hey, he was right.
I mean, it's a brilliant thing that luck just kind of generated for the Packers now, I suppose. So I feel like my initial venture into the world of data and analytics was that it was void of emotion. But I feel like that can't necessarily be the case because of the conversation we just had, right? There is some I don't say natural selection in a literal sense, but there is some understanding of principles and understanding of themes and trends and whatnot, like the Seahawks right now. So how do you marry that? How does a GM or an evaluator marry that with the data that you're acquiring, that you're assessing? Because the combine is in such a different place where some people value certain things, some people value so much, some coaches don't even go to the combine. Like how do you, what's the middle of that Venn diagram look like?
You're going to have to always understand that the college game's so unique now, especially with NIL,
right,
and especially with transfer portal. So you have to make things easier. Stanford last year was using one-word plays for plays that we would have the very long, Gruden-esque,
right,
Greg Roman-esque, like long West Coast plays. Can't do that anymore. I was at Stanford for 5 years, so I can tell you what green, right, west, 96 power king, kill, weak, easy, alert, hound, 2 double go. I can tell you all that. They're just going to say incredible now, right, for the same play, but it's not going to be as component based. And so you have to know that going in. The college game is going to be a lot of air raid, a lot of spread them out, a lot of the same 24 plays. And then you're going to have to do a lot of evaluation of where can this guy fit in. So the players like the blocking tight ends, the fullbacks, those players are actually easier to translate than some of these wide receivers where, hey, you're told to run these plays and you're not the primary. You'll watch Tennessee to conserve guys. Maybe 2 guys only run a full speed route. Right? Like it's hard to evaluate if only 2 guys are running full speed routes because they're going to try and run 100 plays per game. So I think a lot of it's going to come down to what's playing. And then also what you were listed at may not be what you are.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you're listed as a tight end doesn't mean you ever attach to the formation. You were just happen to be 6'5" and 240 pounds. Like that is, Kyle Pitts might not actually be a tight end just because he's listed at one. We always go back to Jordan Cameron, not Cameron Jordan, but Jordan Cameron, who changed his Twitter profile to be pass catcher instead of tight end, so he would not get the tight end franchise tag. There's a lot of those guys these days. If you're Cooper Kupp's in the slot 80% of the time, so is Dalton Kincaid. Can they play the same position or not?
Jimmy Graham walked so everybody else could run in
Yes,
that respect.
exactly.
That's very well said.
Exactly.
I love that. I also love how difficult it is to evaluate because some dudes are just ballers. I'm a Sun Devil, and so you guys are finally willing to play us again. So that's good to know. But I think of Jordan Tyson as it relates to the NFL Combine. Obviously, not going to do much of anything there. But that being said, like, at what point do you use data or do you use film? Which way back and forth? Would someone use data or film? Which way back and forth to corroborate an idea? Because to your point, these offenses aren't ridiculously complex, but at a certain point, you're like, man, that dude just kicks ass. So like what are you trying to cross reference and double check to confirm? I don't want to call it a bias, but an initial hypothesis.
I do film first because
Right.
you have to look at what the context of the plays are.
Mhm.
Right. We'll go back years ago. Derrick Henry was really high in the league in rushing about 4 games in, but he had 3 75-yard runs on his
Mhm.
plays that if he would have gone down, they would have won the game. But he chose to go score a touchdown and get 75 yards. It worked out for him. He's doing okay. But you have to look at the context of what happens in the game before you go to the data because you may not know. Right. Then you go to the data, and what you'll like is what we'll talk about is like relative athletic score.
Of course.
That's where you take the drills and find out where the maximum and minimum things, thresholds that you need to hit to be able to be a elite prospect from a height, weight, speed place. And then what do you care about as a team? Because any way you slice the data, you can find a player that you like,
Mhm.
but you need to find out what's going to be your team identity. What do you care about? And then when you are proven right or wrong, go back to the film. And it's a cyclical process to be able to go film analytics, film analytics. But I worked with Eric Alco. He was my head of player personnel at the XFL, runs the Shrine Bowl. And he was able to communicate the way they write their packets there at Optimum Scouting is that anyone can read it and have their own interpretation. They won't
Right.
tell you what I really like about this guy is he does this, this, this. They just write what he does in the review in the packet. And that way you can make an assumption. If you like heavy hands at the point of attack or you like quick hands, you're going to find out. But that packet will then tell you that information. I think the next step is being able to pump a lot of this information into an LLM to try and find similar players. Now, I'm not telling you it's going to be perfect and it's going to get an AI is going to solve all our problems, but it will help you find similar aspects in players outside of just testing numbers, which can be gamed.
Yeah, I mean, you can at least, for lack of a better word, filter what you're searching for, so to speak, because that boils down to like coach the player, don't like force the player into your scheme, whatever the case may be, and so like figure out the strengths or the weaknesses that you like or don't want that are a part of your team, and hunt those. That makes a lot of sense. As it relates to the like evolution of data, what drills at the combine do you think have become more valuable that we poo-pooed in the past?
Well, the gauntlet is super interesting. Next Gen Stats has a GPS tracker on the gauntlet, and you can all see how they perform that's the one where they start with their back turned, they turn to each side, and a wide receiver or tight end will sprint down a line. You'll be able to see how straight he is on that line, and how often he's catching the pass, and then how fast he's through that. So there's a lot of different things you can evaluate. But now we can compare how a player does instead of going, oh, this is what he looks like and he did, or what he didn't look like he did. Puka Nacua had one of the best times ever on the gauntlet. Right? 4.5, 4.40, but one of the best times of the gauntlet. That's a little more closer to game speed. And I think just like we did at the XFL with the GPS drills, I think these drills that we can now chart how they're doing will make them more valuable than just players hanging out in their underwear working out.
Yeah, I mean, Puka is like the case study for all this, right? Like Puka is the like, why should I care about this arm of the NFL, arm of sports at large? Puka Nacua is the end. I mean, and as soon as he gets his contract this offseason, that will be like the visible example.
But also remember 4 stars and 5 stars are 4 stars and 5 stars. They say this as a 2-star. But like 4 stars and 5 stars, we're not all great at evaluating high school talent. I'm not saying all of them are going to work out, but the good players are often good.
That's a great as an Arizona State fan whose team was active in the portal this year with acquiring all these dudes. I'm hopeful that cream is in fact going to rise to the top. Last one for you, Sam. What's your like? Because I feel like you of all people probably still run into a lot of people who doubt. I don't even want to call it this world. Like it's not new. It's not a new frontier. It's not like you're blazing a trail or anything at this point. But like, what's your pitch to people to watch football the way you do at this point?
First, it's more fun. Anything you get to learn about, the more you learn about something, the more fun you're going to have. And beauty of football is it'll never be figured out. We figured it out with nickel. Guess what? The running game's going to come back. And then 2 tight end sets have come back. Where 5 years ago, we're talking about Joe Burrow and 11 personnel the whole time. Everyone likes to sound like they're some scientist or greatness. Oh, I found the next best thing. This sport is unsolvable. And so I think it's great. And then when you think about Prime Vision, we're trying to be able to make sure everyone can watch the game like a 10-year NFL veteran. Like, why do you have to sit in meeting rooms with Jim Harbaugh to watch the game like I do? That's not the point. Let's make AI that can help bring that game to you. And so I think that just makes it more fun. And then you're watching it like on our camera angle on Prime Vision, where you're behind the quarterback, high sky camera. You can see everything. It's a little more interesting way to watch the game than just following the ball, which it's still an amazing way to watch the game. Football is the most popular sport in this country. But I think that if you're going to do it, and then lastly, it's all about winning. Competition is everything. We celebrated the Olympic win over the Canadian in hockey in both men's and women's. It was awesome. Winning is everything. And so if you can watch the game with an eye about how these coaches and players watch so they can how they want to win the game, for the fans at home, I think that takes you even closer to the game, because this is what they're watching for. They're looking at tendencies. They're looking at data to help them make decisions. Like, when I first started this, my first job was explain why coaches go for it on 4th down. Now everyone kind of just accepts that 4th and 1, you're going for it. Like I have job security with a lot of the AI stuff, so it's nice that's propped up. But I think just being able to accept and find out that teams care about this stuff. Another mantra we have on our show is, if the teams care, we care.
Yeah.
Teams are investing heavily in analytics. You should care because the teams care, and that's important.
I love that. You guys do an incredible job, and it amplifies. I think it gives a great, like, I understand that people, if their team's playing, you want the conventional broadcast, but I love like your random Thursday Night Football. If it's not your teams, you're able to learn, you're able to adjust, somebody's going to be a free agent. Like, you can find, that's the NFL. You can find any slant to enjoy it in any kind of way. I also think people love being right. That's why this time of year is so fun. When you find that guy, when you plant your flag, when you're like, that's my guy, and then you get the justification. There's nothing sweeter than that. So you guys are absolutely killing it. Jim Harbaugh, shout out. Obviously, that was, hey, I mean, whatever. I know, but again, Stanford was ducking Arizona State, so it's really, I'm glad to see you guys are finally.
You didn't say that in the Pac-12 championship game. We had to go down there and beat you guys. It's not a big deal.
We're letting bygones be bygones, Sam. And like, as much as I loved it, the Pac-12 doesn't exist the way that we knew it to anymore. Like, you're talking to a Big 12 champion here at this point. You know what I mean?
It's so funny. My daughter's gonna be like, Dad, did you even really play football? When she's old enough, she's gonna be like, there is no such thing as the Pac-12. You bragging about this Pac-12 championship. What does that even mean?
Yeah, might as well be the wishbone. But by then, the NFL may have caught up. You know what I mean? Like, in the cyclical nature, that's what we'll be at. Sam, you're the man. Keep spreading the good word. And hopefully, the way you don't have to explain going for it on 4th down anymore, maybe we'll reach that place when teams are down 14 or 15 and they score a touchdown and they go for 2 routes. Like, that's our next goal as a society. Like, get past having to explain why that is the right choice.
We can't solve all those problems. I need employment. We can't solve all those problems. I got bills too.
I will never, ever forgive people who make that mistake. But Sam, you're the man. Really appreciate it. Have a great offseason. Hope to chat soon.
Thanks. Have a good one.